Oh, hello there. I'm Bilchan.
I'm Nimikung.
I'm Banchan.
In this class, I'll read to all of you. Chapter 1, Section 2 of the picture of Dorian Gray.
As.
The picture of Dorian Gray. Oscar Wilde. Chapter 1, Section 2. A sure pause. Lord Henry pulled out his watch. I am afraid I must be going. Basil, he murmured. And before I go. What is that? Said the painter, keeping his eyes fixed on the ground. I do not. Well, I will tell you what it is. I want you to explain to me why you were to exhibit Dorian Gray's picture. No. You did not. You said it was because there was too much of yourself in it. Van. Harry, said Basil Hallward, looking him straight in the face. Every portrait that is painted with feeling is a portrait of the artist, not of the sitter. The sitter is merely the accident, the occasion. It is not he who is revealed by the painter. It is rather the painter who, on the coloured canvas, reveals himself. Lord Henry laughed. And what is that? He asked. I will tell you, said Howard. But an expression of perplexity came over his face. I am all expectation. Basil continued his companion, glancing at him. Well, there is really very little to tell. Harry, answered the painter, and I am afraid you will hardly understand it. Lord Henry smiled, and leaning down, plucked a pink-petaled daisy from the grass and examined it. I am quite sure I shall understand it, he replied, gazing intently at the little goulding. Why feather disc? And as for believing things, I can believe anything. The wind shook some blossoms from the trees, and the heavy lilac blooms, with their clustering stars, moved to and fro in the languid air. A grasshopper began to chirrup by the wall, and like a blue thread a long thin dragonfly floated past on its brown gauze. Once, Lord Henry felt as if he could hear Basil Hallward's heart beating, and wondered what was coming. The story is simply this, said the painter after some time. 2 months ago I went to a crush at Lady Brandon's. You know, we poor artists have to show ourselves in society from time to time, just to remind the public that we are not savages, with an evening coat and a white tie, as you told me once. Anybody, even a stockbroker, can gain a reputation for being civilized. Well, after I had been in the room about 10 minutes, talking to huge overdressed storagers and tedious academicians, I suddenly became conscious that someone was looking at me. I turned halfway round and saw Dorian Gray for the first time. When our eyes met, I felt that I was growing pale. A curious sensation of terror came over me. I knew that I had come face to face with someone whose mere personality was so fascinating that, if I allowed it to do so, it would absorb my whole nature, my whole soul, my very art itself. I did not want any external influence in my life. You know yourself, Ari, how independent I am by nature. I have always been my own master. Had at least always been so. Till I met Dorian Gray. But I don't know how to explain it to you. Something seemed to tell me that I was on the verge of a terrible crisis in my life. I had a strange feeling that fate had in store for me exquisite joys and exquisite sorrows. I grew afraid and turned to quit the room. It was not conscience that made me do so. It was a sort of cowardice. Conscience and cowardice are really the same things. Basil. Conscience is the trade name of the firm. I don't believe that. Ari. And I don't believe you do either. However, whatever was my motive, and it may have been pride, for I used to be very proud, he suddenly struggled to the door. There. Of course. I stumbled against Lady Brandon. You are not going to run away so soon. Waste it. Howard, she screamed out. Yes. She is a peacock in everything but beauty, said Lord Henry, playing the daisy to bits with his long nervous fingers. I could not get rid of her. She brought me up to royalties, and people with stars and garters, and elderly ladies with gigantic tiaras and parrot noses. She spoke of me as her dearest friend. I had only met her once before, but she took it into her head to lionize me. I believe some picture of mine had made a great success at the time. At least had been chatted about in the penny newspapers, which is the 19th century standard of immortality. Suddenly I found myself face to face with the young man whose personality had so strangely stirred me. We were quite close, almost touching. Our eyes met again. It was reckless of me, but I asked Lady Brandon to introduce me to him. Perhaps it was not so reckless. After all, it was simply inevitable. We would have spoken to each other without any introduction. I am sure of that. Dorian told me so afterwards. Do. And how did Lady Brandon describe this wonderful young man? Asked his companion. I know she goes in for giving a rapid process of all her guests. I remember her bringing me up to truculent and red-faced old gentleman Coverall, over with orders and ribbons, and his singing to my ear, in a tragic whisper which must have been perfectly audible to everybody in the room. The most astounding details. I simply fled. I like to find out people for myself. But Lady Brandon treats her guests exactly as an auctioneer treats his goods. She either explains them entirely away. Poor Lady Brandon. You are hard on her. Harry, said Howard listlessly. My dear fellow. She tried to found a salon, and only succeeded in opening a restaurant. How could I admire her? But tell me, what did she say about Mr. Well, something like, charming boy, poor dear mother, and I absolutely inseparable. Quite forget what he just afraid I doesn't do anything of. S. Plays the piano, or is it the violin? Dear Mr. Cry. Neither of us could help laughing. Laughter is not at all a bad beginning for a friendship. And it is for the best indeed for one, said the young lord, plucking another daisy. Howard shook his head. You don't understand what friendship is. Harry, he murmured, "or what enmity is. For that matter, you like everyone. That is to say, how horribly unjust of you," cried Lord Henry, tilting his hat back and looking up at the little clouds that griveled skeins of gauzy white silk were drifting across the hollow turquoise of the summer sky. Yes, horribly unjust of you. I make a great difference between people. I choose my friends for their good looks, my acquaintances for their good characters, and my enemies for their good intellect. A man cannot be too careful in the choice of his enemies. I have not got one who is a fool. They are all men of some intellectual power, and consequently they all appreciate me. Is that very vain of me? I should think it was. Harry, my dear old Basil, and much less than a friend, a sort of brother. Well, brothers. I don't care for brothers. My elder brother won't die. Harry exclaimed Hallward. Browning, my dear fellow, I am not quite serious, but I can't help detesting my relations. I suppose it comes from the fact that none of us can stand other people having the same faults as ourselves. I quite sympathise with the rage of the English democracy against what they call the prices of the upper orders. The masses feel that drunkenness, stupidity, and immorality should be their own special property, and that if any one of us makes an ass of himself, he is touching on their preserves. When poor Southwark got into the divorce court, their indignation is quite magnificent. I don't agree with a single word that you have said, and what is more, Harry, to be continued.